Last night, FC Barcelona concluded their American leg of their pre-season tour after a 2-2 draw against AC Milan, eventually losing on penalties, which we do not care about. Welcome to the first half tactics of this particular game. We're going to do a separate video on the second half tactics because we saw two very different Barcelonas, right? But before we get into all of that, please do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow bigger. We upload weekly Barcelona content on the tactical side only. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Both teams line up as 4-2-3-1 with Andreas Christensen actually starting in midfield. Is this maybe Barcelona telling us that we're not going to sign a single pivot this season? In the build-up phase, it was Rafael Leao that joined Jovic up front to create pressure on Barcelona's centre-backs Longley and Dominguez, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek joined Pulisic to put pressure on Barcelona's double pivot, but ter Stegen joined a back three of Longley, Dominguez and Mark to create a 3 against 2, and you did see that Andreas actually went as a single pivot, and then Casado would go up the pitch, which would ultimately drag Ruben away from the press, which created holes in their press. I think it's pretty clear that if teams are going to press us with the front two, that we will be seeing ter Stegen getting involved a lot more. And you saw here that Leao and Jovic up front. And then you also see that Andreas Christensen was a lone pivot and Casado higher up the pitch. But wait a second, guys. Just hold up. YouTube tells me that 80% of you guys that watch the channel are not subscribed to the channel. Like, guys, do us a favor, man. Go and subscribe to the channel. Let others know too about this great content. Anyway, because of the verticality and the space that Barcelona kept on finding, especially on the wings, Leao went back to his wing position where he would defend, and Pulisic would actually join Jovic up front in order to block down the center for Barcelona, which means the central progression for us wasn't on. But Andreas was dropping in between the centre backs in order to create a back three, and now you can see that Jovic has nobody to mark, and he was often the one being drawn into a press, and the others quite frankly had to follow his press. And this is how Barcelona opened up the centre once again to create those vertical passing lanes that we've seen in this pre-season. But oddly enough, Andreas actually dropped between Martin and Longley for most of the time because Jovic was more than likely going to press the middle player. That is when Christensen would receive the ball in these areas and be allowed to drive up the pitch or in order to draw players out of position and then find Gundogan. Here we see that Christian Pulisic joined Jovic up front as a front two, and they're not really pressing, right? Blocking the center towards Gundogan and Casado. But look at the positioning of Andreas Christensen. You know, he's in there being an option in between Dominguez and Clement Longley. But look here, towards the left side was his preferred place to drop to, you know, and he wasn't there all the time. And look at Jovic being drawn into a press, and because Jovic is drawn into a press, Chukwueze actually has to follow up that press, which meant that Barcelona would now have space elsewhere on the pitch. And you can see that the moment they started to press from this position, Barcelona was now easily finding the likes of Andreas Christensen in between the lines, and this is verticality at its best because of movement. But I want to show you guys something. You know how Casado or one of the pivots always drop between centre-back and full-back? This was not a repetitive thing where Barcelona did this all the time. But instead, he would normally, for most of the time during the game, actually stay centrally as well. When the centre-backs were pressed, AC Milan followed that up by pressing the centre-backs as well. And then you would see Chukwueze and the right-back actually go on to Rafinha and Martin. And then it was actually Gundogan who came all the way from his position to get in the ball. Again, vertical as ever. And then you would see that when Gundogan would receive, it was actually Rafinha who would run ahead of him most of the time and actually bring this right back and also bring it like extremely narrow. And then you would see that Martin came forward and he would actually drag Chukwueze way back. You know, and Barcelona tried to get in behind the defense here, and then Gundogan made those late runs where he would, many times, this didn't happen often, but he's going to get on the end of these crosses and actually bury them and put them away. You know, this is something that I've never seen before because you can see here that Gundogan in the space and everybody is marked by a player that's supposed to stay on them. You can see Jovic actually was staying on Barcelona's centre-back. And Gundogan was totally alone. He could really turn there, and you can see how Rafinha runs ahead of him when he moves into that position coming next to this to the double pivot. And Rafinha running ahead of Gundogan is really a great thing because you're going to see Rafinha is very comfortable in the half space. And you can see Rafinha is in the half space here with the left back actually wide. And this is what's great because the players are not there already. They have to move in there. So there is great movement from this flick side. But if you have stayed up until this point, I want you to comment Danny Olmo and actually what do you think about this signing, because we have seen some mixed reactions. Like I said, guys, we're going to have a second video coming for AC Milan versus Barcelona the second half, because like I said in the beginning of the video, these were two different Barcelonas that we saw. As always, please do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow bigger. We upload weekly Barcelona content. So seeing you in the next one, Barcelona versus AC Milan.